Next week, a police officer from South Yorkshire will face a disciplinary panel with the power to sack him. His crime? Tampering with evidence, fabricating a confession, nothing of the kind. PC David Warwick is facing a misconduct hearing for allegedly saying, quote, "Maybe I should start eating curry," when he learned of an Asian man who had lived to the age of 105. The constable is said to have made the remark whilst chatting to another officer described as being of British Indian heritage at the Shepcote Lane police station in Sheffield last summer. A summary of the alleged hate incident is provided by South Yorkshire Police, and it says the hearing will decide if PC Warwick used a racially offensive stereotype. Let's turn to Andrew Doyle for his reflections on this one. Andrew, what do you make of it?
Well, the first thing to say that is absolutely perfectly clear that what he said is not racist. I mean, let's just say, I mean, sometimes there's some ambiguity of these things, isn't there? But with this particular case, I don't think anyone in their right mind would claim that he was making a racist statement. It'd be interesting if he substituted the word curry for something else of another nationality, say maybe I should start eating pizza if the person was Italian or anything like that. I don't think anyone would blink an eye. So it does seem to be the specific nationality that he was referring to. But I think what this does do is it points to something, a broader problem in society at the moment, which is the degradation of the word racist and the way in which it just seems to be applied willy-nilly without any real thought about what it actually means. We all used to know what it meant. Racism meant hatred or prejudice against people because of their skin colour. Now, there are two reasons why that's changed. Firstly, I think social media, because if you see someone being called racist on social media, 9 times out of 10, it's not true. It's just a kind of catch-all slur along with transphobe, homophobe, fascist, even Nazi. I mean, it is it's a ridiculous wild west of linguistic territory. And that's one of the reasons. So it's degraded the word. It's been so promiscuously applied that actually it's degraded its meaning, which is a problem because we need to be able to identify actual racists in society. We need to have a word for them so that we can call them out when we see them. And if you're just calling a police officer racist because something he said was vaguely associated with another nation, but clearly didn't have any hateful intent, it doesn't mean anything at all at this point. And I think...
Sorry. There's another thing going on, isn't there, surely? We've talked about this many times before, this idea that actually the old evidential bar that you had to demonstrate that a charge as serious as calling somebody a racist could be demonstrably true. Well, that calculation changes, doesn't it? And it's been changing since the Macpherson inquiry into the dreadful murder of the teenager Stephen Lawrence in London. And then we've got this notion that's been popularised and rolled out across many institutions now, that if you personally feel that you are the victim of whatever it might be, racism, homophobia, sexism, then the crime is wholly in the eye of the beholder, it's not something which is adjudged by a third-party agency. If you feel it to be true, it's true.
You've hit on a couple of really important points. I think the first thing to say is to just reiterate what you said at the start there, which is that the accusation of racism is incredibly serious. It's one of the most serious things you can call someone because it has devastating consequences for people's career. So you do have to be sure that you've got evidence for it and not just throw the term around. So that's one thing that seems to have gone out of the window. But the second point you mentioned, I think, is most important. And the reason it's happening is because there is now a prioritization of this notion of lived experience. Now, this is coming straight from the playbook of critical social justice, this ideological movement that lots of people can detect. We've all experienced it. We know what's going on with the various unconscious bias training and equity sessions and inclusion workshops and stuff. But people can't really put their finger on what it is. And one of the key tenets of this movement is, as you said, this notion of lived experience, this notion of this, if I perceive that something was intended to hurt me from a prejudicial angle, then that is the case. And this has seeped into police practice across the board. So if you go to the government hate crime website, you can see for yourself, they define, the Crown Prosecution Service defines a hate crime as based on whether the crime was, motivated by hatred of one of the protected characteristics, and they list 5 protected characteristics, which are the ones you would expect. And then they add an extra element, which is the non-crime hate incident, which we've talked about before, I think, where, you know, what you've done isn't criminal, but you've caused offence to someone, and that person perceives it to be motivated by hatred for that protected characteristic. So again, and the word perception is used again and again in the documentation, which can be verified on the Crown Prosecution website or on the government's website on hate crime. If people don't believe me, have a look. And that, of course, is a threat to due process. And you know it's a threat to due process because on these texts, they also refer to the victim, not the complainant. And that, again, is related to this idea that if someone thinks they're a victim, they are a victim. Of course, victim implies a judgment has already happened. Right. So I think someone has to do something about this. Someone has to. I mean, in this case, it's PC David Warwick. Yeah. If he is found guilty, he'll lose his job. If not, then maybe it will be a non-crime hate incident. I saw Toby Young earlier speculating, would this be a non-crime hate incident on his record, which would affect a police officer if it was on their record, of course.
Yeah, so, I saw that line as well, Toby Young of the Free Speech Union. And we're just going to clear up one final thing before you go, Andrew, because I know I'll get tweets about it. Process, not process.
Oh, OK, there we go. Colin.
Andrew, lovely to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.